guys, welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to design this in Photoshop. So if you don't mind, you know the drill. Let's get started. So like you see over here, I have my Photoshop open. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to click on File, and I'm just going to set up things to begin with. So I'm going to be working with inches, and I'm just going to set it to 4 by 5, and I'm just going to give this just going to change the name to LeBron James poster, just like this, right? So my resolution stays at 300, and what else again? I'm going to leave all this the same, and I'm going to click on what? Create, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a solid color. So I'm just going to come here, select this, and click on solid color, right? So the color code I'm going to use for this is 231501, just like this, right? So I want to click OK. So this is like the base color that we're going to have. So this is like the base color that we're going to have for this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the first image that I used for this design. So I'm just going to go over to where I have. If you want to download any of this, you can click on description in below this video, so it takes you to where you can download all of these files from, so we can just do this together. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to drag this inside of Photoshop, just like this, and I'm going to position it at the base like this, right? Zoom out with my scroll wheel just like this. I think I'm going to make this bigger just at this point, right? I'm going to make sure I have this at this point here. So I haven't done this. I'm just going to create a mask on it, right? A mask like this, and I'm going to go over to my brush. Make sure your brush is selecting the soft round, right? And make sure your foreground color is set to black. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase some of the parts that I don't want to make use of. So I'm just going to gently do this like this. I'm going to reduce, my opacity was set to 50. Use the brush, right? So I'm going to leave this at 20, and I'm just going to clean up some of these areas around here too. I'm just going to clean up some edges here too, and I'm just going to I'm just going to create an atmosphere that is not too sharp for my composition. So I'm just going to rub on all of these parts like this. I want to take out some of this cut here, so I don't have any of that. I'm okay with the lights, but then I'm going to take off the cut, and this is what I have, right? So I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to go to blur, filter, and select blur, and click on Gaussian blur. And you can just use the value that I used. I'm okay with 1.7, so I'm going to click OK like this. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my second image. I'm just going to drag and drop like this, right? So I'm just going to make this bigger, right? Up onto this point like this. I'm just going to position it here like this. But what I'm going to do is, first things first, I'm going to reduce the opacity. So I'm going to come over to this point here, and I'm just going to impute 70, right? Um, 70 looks too much, too obvious, so I'm going to reduce it to 40. Great, right? So with this done, I'm just going to conceal some areas that I won't be making use of. So I'm going to create a layer mask with this, and I'm just going to use my brush. This time I'm increasing it to 70, and I'm just going to clean off these areas that I don't really need, right? I'm just going to go over the edges like this because I don't want so many things here, right? Good. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply color balance. So I'm just going to come here, and select color balance. Now I'm going to clip it on this particular image. So in my layers tab, I'm just going to clip it to this point here, right? So having done this, I'm just going to make a few adjustments to what I have here. So I'm just starting from the midtones first, and I'm just going to drag this all the way up to 100% blue like this. I'm going to go over to the shadows too, so I'm going to locate the shadows and I'm going to drag it all the way down here. That's -100. And the last point I'm going to visit is the highlights. So I'm going to select the highlights, and I think I might want to tune this up. I'll just set my values to -22. Right, so this is what I used for shadows and midtones and highlights, guys. Good. So this is exactly how I want it to be, right? So the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to click on adjustment layer again. This time I'm using the hue and saturation. Still clicked on it, and I'm just going to reduce the saturation just a bit like this. All right, great. So having done this, I'm just going to click on, because I want my image to look crispy and sharp. So I'm just going to go over to filter. I'm going to go to camera raw, and I'm just going to apply I'm just going to bump up under the basics. I'm just going to bump up the texture, right? And I'm just going to de-age this, set it to 20. I'm going to click OK like this, right, to bring in a little bit of clarity to it. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to go to the topmost layer like this, and I'm going to create a rectangle just from this part here like this, right? So I'm going to leave it up onto this part here like this. But for this, I'm going to be changing the color of this rectangle. So I'm going to double click on the thumbnail like this, and I'm just going to impute the color that I used. So for this, I have 683, and I have F06 like this, right? So this is the color I'm going to be making use of, right? So after I've done this, I'm going to change the blend mode to linear dodge add like this, just so it creates an aura of brightness. Having done this, I'm just going to click on the mask whilst the rectangle is selected. Click on it like this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on G on the keyboard, and I'm just going to drag down like this. Okay, sorry, before I do that, I have to revert this, right? So having done that, I'm just going to drag down like this from this point here to this point, right? Good. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of blur to it. So I'm going to go to filter, and I'm going to go to blur, and I'm going to apply Gaussian blur, converting it to smart object. Yeah, well, just a little bit, and I'm okay with this at this point, right? So we're done with that. So next thing I want to do is I need to get in some of LeBron's images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first one, the first image. So I'm just going to go on and drag this inside here like this. I'm going to slightly reduce the size, right, like this, and just like this. So I'm going to start working with this to start with. So I'm just going to create a mask, because I need to conceal some of these parts here. So I'm just going to create a mask like this, and what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to conceal all these parts. So I'll make sure my foreground color is set to black, and I'm just going to reduce the size of my brush like this, and I'm just going to hide all these areas here like this, right? Great, good. So Ctrl T, I want to reduce the size of this just a bit, and I think that's nice. Right, so having done this, I'm going to bring in the second image that I used. Right. So I'm going to bring in the second image that I used, which is this. So I'm just going to drag and I'm going to drop inside like this. This image kind of bright, too bright, but I'm going to deal with that. So I'm just going to drag this under this, right? So it's just slightly behind what I have here already, but I'm going to position this here. And on the last image, I'm just going to bring in the last image, right, which is this one, and I'm just going to drag and drop inside here like this. But this is, click enter. So I'm just going to drag this upwards so it's directly on top of all of them, right? But with this one, I'm going to make it face this position. So what I'm going to do is Ctrl T, right click and click on flip horizontal, just like this, right? Good. So having done this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some balancing on these images. For this one, to start with, I'm going to click on adjustment layer. I'm going to select curves. I'm going to clip it, of course, on the same layer. Hold down the Alt key to just clip it on top of what you have here, guys. So having done that, I'm just going to reduce the brightness, and yes, just like this, right? Good. But before I do all of this, I'm going to take let me just delete this first. I've observed that I have some things here. I want to get rid of these white areas that I have here. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to rasterize this layer like this. Click on rasterize, just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, and before I do that, I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to hold down the Control key of my keyboard while I select it, just to make a selection of the image itself. So I'm going over to select, and I'm going to hold down Shift while I select, while selecting this select and mask. Make sure you're holding down Shift. So select and mask. What I'm going to do basically is I'm going to shift the edge inside like this, and I'm going to smoothen it up. I think for smooth, I'm going to use 22. You can see those edges are no longer there again, right? Good. So having done this, I'm just going to click OK like this, and you can see you have them outside. So what you're going to simply do is click on the mask, and voila, it's gone, right? So having done this, I'm just going to go over to my adjustment layer, and I'm going to select curves. Good. But I'm going to clip it directly on top of it. So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit like this, and I'm going to click on this RGB value, and I'm going to click on the blue, and I'm just going to drop this down a bit to give me this same yellow feel that I have on this. So with this one here, let me zoom close. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing that I did for this image. So I'm going to do is select it, right click, change it. I'm going to rasterize this. I'm going to right click and select the thumbnail of this layer. I'm going to select, hold down Shift and select this option here like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take in the edges. Let me zoom close so I see what I'm doing perfectly well. I'm going to smoothen this up. Let's see if there are changes to it. As you can see, I can see my changes. So having done this, I'm going to click OK like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on mask to mask out those areas that I have taken off, right? So having done this, you can also click on it and convert it to smart objects, because you might want to add some extra effects to it later on. So for this one too, I'm going to click on it and convert to smart object, just like this, right? So I'm through with the part that of with how I have to analyze all of those things. Now the next thing I need to do is adding shadows to these images to make it more realistic. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to select it just underneath. I'm just going to click on it, and I'm going to create a new layer like this. I'm going to change my foreground color, but I don't need to stress myself too much. I'm just going to click on D on my keyboard to revert to the default colors, that is black and white. So I have black as my foreground color, so I'm just going to go over to my brush, select your brush, make sure again you're selecting the soft round brush, right? So I'm just going to reduce my flow to let's start with 50. Click OK, and I'm just going to reduce this. So on this part, I'm just going to create my shadows like this, right? I want amount of shadows here, so I'm going to leave this way. I'm just going to, okay, for this part I'm not going to do too much because I have a reflection of light coming from this part here, so I'm just not going to do too much here. But on this part I'm just going to make it obvious. I've done for this one, so I'm going back to my selection tool, selecting this one. I'm going to go over to this layer, create a new layer like this, right? Go over to my brush tool, and I'm just going to create you might want to be more precise with your approach when it comes to these shadows, right? I might have more here since I'm going to have a light effect somewhere here, so I'm not going to do too much around these areas here. So if you do a mistake, you just press Ctrl Z to go back and reapply. Now I want to, as you can see closely, I have sharp edges for this image, so I want to get rid of it. So what I do is I click on this layer, right? Click on this layer. I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard, and I'm just going to click on these eyes, so I have just this image. So with this, I'm just going to create the mask on it, and I'm going to click on the brush. My flow remains at 50, so I'm just going to blow this out like this, like this. So when I'm done, I just click on Alt to turn everything back on like this, right? So having done this, I think I'm liking the atmosphere that I'm creating with this, right? So having done all of this, I'm just going to go up here, and I think I'm going to create a curves adjustment, but this time is good. Okay, I forgot this, so I'm just going to click on this image. I need to add shadow to it too, so I'm clicking on this layer, create a new layer just directly under it like this. I'm going to go over to my brush, selecting my brush. I'm going to apply shadows just like this, down like this, up onto this point. Okay, I don't need to add too much shadow to that point. I'm going to make this smaller, so I have shadows around the hands here like this. I'm going to have some on this part too, so nicely done, right? Good. So with this, I have the first part of my composition set. Okay, so at this point now, the next thing I'm going to do is, like, I can see that my composition is getting too bright. I really do not want that to be the case here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go to the adjustment layer. I'm going to select curves, and I'm just going to come down at this point that I have here. I'm just going to slightly bring this down, right? I'll just slightly bring it down. My input 71, my output 66, right? So you can use the same value that I used. So 71 and 66, great. And let's see, so this is before and after. So it might not be too much of an effect that you can see well, but then you can actually see changes, because at the end of the day you want to balance things off well, right? Great. So the next thing I want to do is I'll go over to my folder, and I'm going to bring in some other elements. For example, I have the Nike boots here, so I'm just going to drag it and just going to place it inside here like this. But with this one, I'm just going to create some few effects with it. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to duplicate this, Ctrl J. I'm going to have this here, but with this one I'm going to Ctrl T, and I'm just going to flip horizontally, and I'm just going to bring it outside to this point here, whilst I make it bigger just like this. right? Good. So I'm going to start with this one, the first one. For you to even select like the way I'm selecting, you must make sure this is checked marked on your PC, right? So select this, and I'm just going to go to filter, I'm going to blur, I'm going to motion blur, right? So I'm just going to follow the direction of the shoe. For instance, now if you look at, that's the shoe, the boot. So for instance, you see the boot is facing this part, so the blur is too much, so the direction, the angle stays at let's see, 37 is good. I think the distance at that's the amount of blur you want to apply to it, so I'm just going to leave mine at 33, and that's all. Right, so with this one I'm going to do the same thing too, blur and motion blur, but with this one my direction, my angle is going to face like this point, and my distance is going to be slightly higher than what I have here, right? Great. Okay, so that's good to go. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create an extra effect with this image that I have here, but before I do that, I'm going to select this image, go to filter, camera raw. I need it to be a little bit sharper than it is right now. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to zoom all the way in, and I'm going over to my texture. I'm going to increase it to, and I'm going to go over to details. I'm going to sharpen this up until this point, let's say 6. That's what I'm going to be working with. I'm just going to press OK. So at the end of the day it has become more sharper, right? Great. Okay, so slightly notice that the coloration here is quite different from what we have here, so I'm going to create an adjustment layer, hue and saturation. I'm just going to clip it directly on top of this image, which is this one here, right? So I'm going to do is clip it, and I'm just going to clip it like this, and I'm going to reduce the saturation until I have something somewhere close to this. You can see, guys, so I just got rid of most of the reds on it. Easy peasy, so it works like that. So with this one selected, I'm going to press Ctrl J on my keyboard, and I'm going to focus on this one under it because I have a duplicate copy of this image, right? So don't place, right? So with this one selected, I'm just going to go over to filter. I'm going to blur because I want to create a motion blur with this, so I'm going to select motion blur. So as you can see, it's all going zigzag, but I'm just going to change direction to face like this angle, right? As you can see, but the distance is just too much, so I'm just going to play with my settings like this, and when I'm comfortable with what I have, I'm just going to slightly click OK, right? So with what I have here, I'm just going to get rid of some parts of this. I'm going to mask it out with layer mask. I'm going to go over to my brush, select the brush, and my flow stays at 60, so I'm just going to slightly remove these areas here, right? I'm going to get rid of these areas. I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to get rid of these areas too, so the effect is just going to be on this part alone, right? Great. So having done this, I would go over to the topmost layer, and I'm going to bring in some of my other elements. So next element I'm going to bring in is this light here. So I'm just going to just create a nice aesthetics with this design itself. So I'm going to shift this all the way to the edge, but before I do that, I'm going to right click and click on flip horizontal. So I'm just going to move it to the edge like this, while I make it bigger by holding down the Alt key, just like this. Right, so I'm just going to bring it up all the way to this point like this. Right, so with this, what I'm going to do is very simple. So I'm creating a mask because I need to mask out these areas that I don't need. So I'm just going to click on my brush, make sure the foreground is set to black while your mask is white. You can do the reverse if the case permits you. Right, so I'm just going to conceal all this part here like this, right? And full screen, let me see what I'm doing in real time. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make this more realistic. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to apply a solid color adjustment layer to this. So how am I going to do that? Very simple. So with this, I'm just going to go over to solid color, and I'm just going to select the color that I'm going to use for this. So the value is 792.102. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this to just this light layer. Don't worry, it feels wet this way, but don't worry. I'm going to change the blend mode to, of course, screen like this, but I'm going to hide this first. I'm going to click on light layer, and I'm going to create another hue, but this time I'm using the hue and saturation, right? Good. So with this, I'm just going to click on colorize, right? I'm going to bump this all up to 100. Don't worry about the lights as it is now. So what I want to do is I'm just going to move the hue up to, I'm just going to set this to, I'm going to move the hue up to 48 while my saturation stays at 100, right? So having done this, I'm going to click on the mask, and I'm going to just invert it like this. But before I do that, Ctrl Z, I'm going to change this blend mode to what? To screen, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the mask, and I'm going to click on Ctrl I to invert it. So what I'm just going to do basically is I'm just going to highlight some areas that I feel that's going to have this light effect, right? So with this, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to go over to this light region here, right? I'm going to make my brush smaller. I'm going to increase the flow to like say 70 or 72 as the case may be. Make sure since your since your mask is black, make sure this is white. So I'm going to invert it like this, and I'm just going to gently brighten up these areas to show the presence of lights, right? And I'm going to draw on this. I'm also going to apply the same effect here, and now to make things more interesting, I'm just going to go over the body of, like, in areas like this, I'm going to apply the effects here and there, just somewhat around, so that I have my nice looking effects. I have a light coming in from this part, and of course on top here, right? So I'm going to activate this, of course, but I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to leave this at screen 2, but what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to invert it, Ctrl I. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with this light here. I'm just going to apply the effects gently on this region, right? Just to make it pop more. So I'm just going to apply this red in areas that I already have the color itself, just like this, and voila, there you go. Let me move it upwards. Yes, I think I'm okay with this. Good. So we're good to go, just like this, right? So having done this, I'm going to go back to my adjustment layer. So with this done, I'm just going to I'm selecting all of this, and I'm grouping it. I'm just going to name this lights like this. So I'm just going to move this lights okay, so I'm just going to leave this. Now I want to just simply replicate what I have on this lights directly on the body here. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to go over to where I have all of this from this okay, I'm not going to use from the curves, I'm going to use from this part, and I'm going to select all the way down to the last image. I'm going to group it. So this is what I grouped, the whole image itself. So I'm going to name this image. It's very good when you're working in Photoshop that you group your images so that you have everything doesn't look rowdy and scanty, all of that. So from this color balance here to this point to this color fill, which was the first layer, I'm going to group all of them, and I'm going to name them BG, which is background. Right, great. So with this now, you see that I have drastically reduced my images in this composition. Right, so with this done, what I want to do next is I want to add some extra effect to what I have already. I'm going to add a lighting effect to the body here and to some areas here. So how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I'm just going to simply select the images first. I'm going to work in with this. I spelled this wrongly, so I'm going to spell it right. So I'm going to select the images, and directly on top of it, I'm just going to click a create a solid color adjustment layer. Right. So with this color, I'm just going to come up here and select this light here, this one here. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to change the blend mode to screen, and I'm going to clip it on the images itself. Right, so with this done, I'm just going to click on the mask to invert it, Ctrl I, and I'm just going to go over to areas that would need this effect to be applied onto. So I'm going to zoom close, and I'm going to start here. Since I have a reflection of light from this part, I'm just going to use my brush, and I want to reduce the flow. So I'm just going to apply the effects gently on areas like this. I'm going to add the effects also to this part here, especially where you have areas where you have. I'm going to work on this too, so I'm just going to reduce the size of my brush like this, and I'm going to apply it to areas like this, and I'm just going to apply it to areas like this also. Right, applying it to areas that need this effect. Right, like this and like this. So with this done, I'm just going to be more strategic while doing this. I'm just going to open up the image, and I'm going to use my selection tool to select this particular image. I'm going to create a solid color on it. I'm going to select the color from the dress here like this. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to invert it like this, which I'm just going to come close and apply the light effects to areas around this particular image, just like this. So in areas like this, I'm just going to add the effects. In the hand region, it's close to the light. I'm going to add this effects, and I'm going to change the blend mode to what? To screen. Right, so I'm just going to do that. Rub off this part. I don't need light, reflection of light here. I need it more on this part. Right, like this, and I'm also going to apply slightly to this part here, and also to areas like this. I'm just going to apply it here too. Right, so having done all of this, I have a good amount of light inside of this composition. Right, so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to close all of this up, and I'm just going to come beneath this, the images. I'm going to create a new layer. What I'm going to do is I need to create a new light effect. So I'm going to double click on this part, and I'm just going to select this point here. Right, this is the code that I used, or I can just select any color from the shirt itself, which is this, and I'm just going to activate my brush, make it bigger. Right, so I'm just simply going to indicate where the light is going to be visible at. Like in areas like this, I'm going to apply the light here. Right, in areas like this, Ctrl Z, make this bigger. I'm going to apply the light here. In areas like this, I'm going to apply, okay, this is too much, slightly like this, and like this, and I'm going to go up, create a new layer. I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to put somewhere here like this, right? Good. So having done this, just a few things to be done and we're good to go. So last thing I want to do is I'll go over to my text layer and I'm just going to type LeBron James. So I'm just going to type LeBron James. I'm going to select my font that I used, which is this, but I'm going to change the color. Select here. I'm going to move this all the way up to white like this, and I'm just going to leave it at this point here. Click enter, zoom in to see what I'm doing clearly. I'm going to leave this at -10, and I'm going to make this bigger like this, James, like this. Okay, so I think I might want to make this smaller. So select the two of them, Ctrl T, and make this smaller like this. Alright guys, so having done all of this, I just want to create, so I'm just going to go over to color balance like this. So I'm just going to move this all up to where I have red, right? For midtones, for the shadows, I'm going to tilt towards, I'm just going to make this -2, and for the highlights, I'm just going to go towards where I have the red to just balance it up, +4, and there you go. So what I'm going to do, what's missing in this poster is I'm just going to come up to add the logos that I used, EA Sports and NBA. I'm just going to drag and starting with this, make it smaller like this, and I'm going to position this here, and with this also I'm just going to position it and make it also smaller like this while I drag it here. Right, good. So Ctrl T to make it bigger, and boom. So this is what I have. Right, so you can go ahead. I'm going to go ahead to make a snapshot of all my layers. Click on the topmost layer, hold down Ctrl Shift and Alt, Ctrl Shift Alt, then E to make a snapshot. I'm just going to go over to filter, and I'm going to go over to camera raw like this, and I'm just going to sharpen this a bit, make it sharper like this. Click on the basics, and I'm just going to reduce the shadows. Right, I'm going to make this darker, a little bit darker, and I'm just going to increase the texture so it comes out punchy, like good. Okay guys, so this brings me to the end of this video. If you've liked this video, please kindly hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of the videos that I'll be dropping anytime from now. Then again, I'll see you in this next video. Ciao.